Can the all-new Honda Transalp 750 dethrone Yamaha's dominating Tenere 700 in the sub-$11,000 adventure bike class? Well, Sean Finley and I got these bikes, outfitted them with some knobby tires, took them on a desert road trip, and we've ridden them a bunch of miles since then to give you the answer to that question. I'm Jesse Ziegler with Cycle News. On Zoom call is the main man, Sean Finley, and we're going to give you the rundown. Basically, we need to start at what is really similar about these bikes, because clearly they're chatting at the right customer, the same customer. On paper, they look really close to the same, right, Sean?
Yeah, they're really similar. You know, the Yamaha kind of created this category a little bit, you know, when they came in at the end of 2020. And at that point, the Tenere was just under $10,000 suggested retail.
Yep.
It was so popular, they were selling for a bit more than that at dealerships for quite a while. But because of that, it's kind of been the most popular bike in based on Motorcycle Industry Council sales for sub 900cc adventure bikes. Price point and bang for the buck is pretty hard to beat on a Tenere. You know, it's like a big oversized dirt bike. So now Honda's kind of tried to come in and steal a little thunder there, though. You know, the Honda now comes in at just under $10,000, just like the Tenere was.
Right.
The Tenere is actually edged up a little bit with the 2024 model now at 10,700 suggested retail. Due to a few updates, it's got an updated TFT dash and a few other updated turn signals, a few other minor things that a little change of the ABS system, stuff like that. So about $700 difference in MSRP now between those two bikes. But the question here is, can the Honda, you know, take down the Yamaha? Other things that are pretty similar, you know, they're both parallel twins, both steel frames, similar fuel capacity, 4.2 gallons on the Tenere, 4.5 on the Honda. Not really enough to make much of a difference, but slightly bigger. Seat height, though, is slightly lower on the Honda. Some people like that. Taller riders, maybe not so much. Both have 18-inch rear wheels, 21-inch front, which is kind of the standard for any off-road ADV bike.
Yep.
KYB suspension on the Yamaha and Showa suspension on the Honda. The big difference there, though, is the KYB suspension on the Yamaha has some adjustability, where the Honda only has preload adjustment on the rear.
Yeah, and I think that's a big differentiating factor on these bikes, and one that really sets the stage onto kind of what the bikes are made for and what, you know, you as a consumer are going to look for in your adventure riding experience. The Yamaha, like, it reset the standard for no frills, analog adventure bikes that are approachable but capable of going long distance. And you actually own one, so I don't have to tell you that. Transalp comes with a bunch of features, like a bunch of stuff that the Tenere just doesn't have, like all of the engine modes and more switching and more complicated computer programs controlling motorcycle stuff. But what it doesn't have is adjustable suspension. So it's sort of like, it almost creates a script for what the bike is really intended to do. And you can read about this. We wrote a story about this already in Cycle News issue last week, which is available for free if you go to cyclenews.com/magazine. But clearly up front, you and I both determined, because it doesn't have adjustable suspension, because it comes standard with an up and down quick shift, because it has a little more power output, a little more fuel tank, and a little more comfortable seating position for sitting down, especially if you're a shorter rider, the Transalp is really better at riding on the road.
Yeah, I'd agree. And it's, like I said, that quick shift is super cool. Yamaha does have an optional quick shift, but it's up only, and it's a $200 add-on. The bike we rode did have that.
Right.
Neither of these bikes, though, are powerful enough to me that like a quick shift is like really awesome. You know, like a sport bike where you can bang through the gears and the thing really accelerates is super cool. These bikes, it's cool, but not nearly as cool as it is on a sport bike. Still a feature I like to have.
Yeah, it's not auto blipping and backfiring like a Ducati up a mountain pass or anything like that, but it is kind of nice to shift quicker. But it shows the Transalp's true spirit as more of a road touring adventure bike, really, than Tenere is almost leaning the other way, where on the road it's not quite as comfortable and capable.
Yeah, and it's not terrible on the road by any means.
Right.
Both of them, are not great street bikes, but
Yeah.
they're good. They're fun. They're comfortable.
Yep.
Neither one of them pretty comfortable to sit on for a long time. But yeah, it's when you take them off road that they really are quite different though, and that's
Yeah.
where I think the Yamaha has a pretty big advantage. The adjustability on the suspension being the big thing, and not even
Yeah.
necessarily the adjustability. The Honda would probably be okay, but the standard settings, which are you can't change,
Yeah.
unfortunately, don't provide a lot of damping control. So it kind of blows through the travel going down and doesn't really do much to slow it down on the way back up. Makes it
That's,
kind of blow through and bottom out and then spring back up off the ground.
yeah, we both noticed that right away. Even on the road heading out to the off road area we were riding in, you quickly understood limitations of the Transalp suspension package as delivered as standard. It simply just doesn't have enough hold up to ride moderately aggressively. It'll bottom out and it'll rebound hard on
Yeah.
pretty small obstacles.
Yeah, if you're just going to cruise down dirt roads and you're
Yeah.
not going to be pretty aggressive, that wouldn't bother you.
Sure.
But if you got into something a little, maybe you didn't expect, come into a little rougher terrain, the Yamaha's going to soak it up where,
Yeah.
the Honda's going to probably spook you a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. If you're sitting down more on dirt roads, Transalp's probably going to be fine because you're not going to be, standing up to hit those obstacles. But if something came up unsuspectedly, that Transalp's going to leave you very surprised when it hits and all of the suspension bottoms out because it's probably going to.
Yeah.
We're not trying to be like only an off-road adventure bike company. If it's an adventure bike, it has to ride off-road and all macho and stuff. But these bikes come with 18-inch rears and 21-inch fronts. And there's only one reason you build a motorcycle with an 18-inch rear tire and a 21-inch front combo, and that's so it's capable off-road. There's no reason to have a street touring bike with a 21-inch front wheel. It's just not the right choice. They don't make the right street tires for it. It doesn't handle that great on the street. So it's clearly built for 50-50 knobbies or more and ride in the dirt. And unfortunately, the Transalp just doesn't have the suspension package to back that up. Motor's great. Electronic controls, gravel mode. You can turn off everything, even though it's more complicated on the electronic stuff. We get into that a little bit more. But really, it comes down to suspension. It just holds it back off-road. And the Tenere 700s, just happy, fine. Stock settings are pretty good on it for basically anything you want to do. You can stiffen it up a little bit more if you want to get it more aggressive and slow the rebound down. And there's more tunability in the Tenere 700. Plus, you don't ever have to really turn anything off to go off the road.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I really like about it. Like you said, I own one. I've owned the thing for 2-3 years now. And I like the fact that I don't have to fiddle back and forth when going back and forth between the street and the dirt, turning ABS on and off is not the only thing you do need to do on the
Yep.
Yamaha. You don't have to fiddle though with, those power modes and all that. The other thing, speaking of that on the Honda, there is a mode for off-road that really was too invasive. Now, fortunately, there's a mode that's a customizable mode,
Yeah.
which allows you to basically take off all of the traction control,
Yeah.
torque control, I think Honda calls it.
Right.
You basically have to use that setting though. Like the first bit of dirt we hit was a really sandy section, and the thing was nearly unrideable.
Yeah.
Even on the off-road setting that should have been the one that really works. And I know Keith that went to the original intro. He had the same comment from the intro. He's like he had to use the customizable setting in order to get a setting that actually really works off-road.
Yeah, the Honda's really safe. It's got a really conservative traction loss setting in its first off-road mode, and it basically shuts down the bike so it can't get out of control. If you want to let it loose and let it fly, you got to go into the custom settings and adjust that. The Tenere, on the other hand, has no traction control, really doesn't need traction control because the motor just produces such smooth torque. It's not overly powerful, but it's good off-road power because it's tractable and predictable.
Exactly. And it's, again, it's not thrilling on the street, but honestly, neither is the Honda, even though it's a little bigger displacement, a little more horsepower.
Yeah.
It's not enough to be noticeable. And probably not enough that you kind of need to fully detune it, in my opinion, either. Both bikes, with the ABS and then the traction control and all those engine setting modes as well on the Honda, reset every time you turn off the key or the kill switch. So that means anytime you stop, if you're riding off road, even you got to go back in there, find your setting,
Yeah.
turn off the traction control, turn off the, change your power setting, all that on the Honda. Where the Yamaha's a little quicker and easier. Even the newer version of the Yamaha, where it now has a little thumb wheel to change
Mm-hmm.
the traction control, you can get to it pretty quick.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as the old one where it was a push button,
Yeah.
but you can still
So
get to
easy.
there pretty quick. You can scroll up to it, hold the setting, you reset, and it's not too hard. And then they also have a slick little button that when you are going from the dirt to the pavement, you can pull over, stop, you can push a button rather than have it even scroll through that thumb wheel and turn your ABS back on if you want it back on for the street.
Which I think is a pretty brilliant move. They took away my favorite button on there, which was to turn the ABS off. It's just, you just held it down and it would turn off and you're like, cool, off road. And when you got back on road, you hit it again. I think it's probably not safe enough for Euro 12 standards or something like that. So they probably had to make it more of a like intent to turn off ABS and a confirmation now. But they left the turn it back on mode easy, which is nice. But I really miss the simple button. And I actually kind of think the thumb wheel's on the wrong side because it's on the throttle side.
Yeah.
And I've never had a menu button on any motorcycle that I've ever ridden that where the menu option is controlled by your throttle hand, because you have to come to a stop to do it unless you're not paying attention to your throttle.
Maybe that's on purpose.
It probably is on
Come to a
purpose.
stop actually to use it.
Probably. But I thought that was a weird thing. I was like, why is there a thumb wheel on the throttle hand? My throttle hand does one thing. It controls the throttle.
One of the updates on the Yamaha that came along with that change in the traction control setting is the new dash, which is pretty slick.
Yeah.
A big improvement over the previous one.
Yeah.
The Honda also has same size TFT dash, but it's horizontal rather than vertical.
Yes.
The vertical setting looks a little more rally style, which I kind of like. But also, it was a little easier to see than the Honda one. And it's a little higher. It's actually up more in your line of sight a little bit better. And something about the angle, it's just a little easier to see, where the Honda looks great if you're riding on the road. Again, it kind of leans more to that road bias, I think, maybe.
Yeah, I
but
think
it's
so.
slanted down slightly and a little lower versus the handlebar. And so especially when you're standing or any dust on it, it was difficult to see. And even on some of the POV cameras we actually had, you could kind of see it was difficult.
Yeah.
Kind of hold your hand over to get a shade over it to kind of get it to be visible, where the Yamaha was pretty easy to see.
There are settings you can increase the brightness of it to help alleviate that, but it's inside the menu. That's not necessarily that easy to navigate through. And Yamaha solved that by increasing their dash to modern TFT and standing it up more so it's not getting direct sunlight. Plus you can see it in the dirt. So again, Yamaha's just winning on basically everything off-road. It's not really losing that much on-road for a lot of these things, but it does have its flaws that haven't been improved. The Tenere 700's biggest flaw is its braking performance. Primarily the rear brake. It's so bad that it stands out so much. We've talked about this in every Tenere test I've ever done. For my first ride in Spain on one in 2019, I was like, this brake is like contaminated. It doesn't work. And what happens is the throw on the lever is really far before you get any engagement on the rear brake. And it's kind of spongy feeling. So you're like, am I using the brake? And you push further and you're like, no, yes. Is it starting? Is it feeling? And pretty soon you just end up almost putting your heel on it and pushing down really hard to get it to bite. And then as soon as it starts to bite, it locks up. And you're like, what? Why did you do that? Like, just modulate. Give me some feel right when my foot touches the brake and make it work. But it still doesn't. It's still pretty bad.
Yeah, agreed. And on my personal bike, I ended up buying a ADV, Camel ADV, it's called. Makes a different lever, which changes the ratio. Improved it a bit. Not sure exactly what it is in there. It's a Brembo unit, it's just something to do with the ABS or who knows what, but it hasn't changed. Even with the updates, to the new bike with the changes in ABS and all that, the rear brake unit is the same, unfortunately. And yeah, it's not great for sure.
No, it's not great. It's an unfortunate knock to an otherwise kind of flawless machine built to be kind of just what you expect and something you can just trust 100%. Rear brake still needs some work. You got to have something to complain about, right? Well, there it is. That's basically our only complaint on the Tenere 700.
Certainly there's some higher priced, higher spec, models, and that's even in that sub 1000 cc category. But the kind of purpose of this test is we were going, okay, under $11,000, we kind of picked that arbitrary number. There's not a lot of other bikes. There's a new ATM 790, the new version, re-release version of that, which we're going to try to put that up against
Yep.
At least against the Tenere, maybe against both of them, and kind of see where that falls in place now.
This is a hot market right now. Tenere dominated this thing for the last 3 years because it was basically a loan, and it was $10,000. Now the prices are climbing up a little bit. We have to raise that ceiling to $11K to keep out contenders that are just overly featured in the $13,000, $14,000, $15,000 range, where you want to hit something closer to $10,000. This is where you're going to be looking. For what you get, this is like true mid-level or mid-size ADV. This isn't 900cc mid-size ADV, which is what a lot of bikes are called mid-size now. This is true mid-size, 700 to 800 cc's is kind of like the sweet spot. There's a new Suzuki that's just priced outside of this we might bring in, but I think there's going to be a lot more room for us to keep talking about these bikes. They're immensely popular. They're selling a lot of them, and I'm excited to see how it shakes out. But in this comparison, before we get ahead of ourselves, the Tenere 700 won against the Transalp 750, mainly because it's more capable in both conditions, especially off-road. It has simpler, intuitive controls. It's not as complicated with electronics, and it rides just kind of better everywhere for the way we anticipate adventure bikes being used.
Yeah, agreed. We like you said before, bike that comes with a 21-inch wheel, which is intended for the dirt, and based on that, kind of feel that the Tenere takes the cake in this contest here.
Yeah, for sure. If you're primarily riding on the road, you might hit a couple of gravel roads in your local area, or you would ride across the country and ignore anything with any technicality. The Transalp's going to probably provide you a very comfortable ride. It has a little bit better wind protection all around. The quick shift is great. The ride modes on the pavement would probably come in more handy if you're coming into rain and then back to sun and those sort of things. It has optional heated grips that I actually really enjoyed because it was cold out when we were riding. But as far as a bike as versatile as possible, the Tenere 700 is taking the cake.
Yep, and they're both good bikes. But yeah, if you're going to lean towards dirt for sure, and lean more towards street, then the Honda's a good choice. But like we said, for us, we like to take adventure bikes out in the dirt, and that's why we put the Yamaha on the top in this one.
Thanks for everybody for helping us out. Bridgestone sent us a set of Battle Axe AX41s. I think I'm saying that right. Tires front and rear. We've run these on a bunch of comparisons because they're a very forgiving tire across all OEMs, seem to handle fine with them. They're a nice 50-50 aggressive knob, but they handle pretty well on the street. So they outfitted us with tires for both of these bikes to keep it on an even playing field. Both the bikes came with a few accessories installed. Like we said, the Transalp had the skid plate and heated grips. Did the Tenere, we have any accessories installed on that?
Just the quick shift was added. So
just the $200 quick shift, right?
The $200 quick shift still kept it under 11,000 as is for both bikes. The Honda with the skid plate and the heated grips would be pretty close to that price point on the Yamaha as well.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody. More of these tests coming up. As we said, we got at least one more bike in line already. It's in my garage right now, the new KTM 790 Adventure, which is going to be interesting because it's got a lot of features that both of these bikes share. So it's going to be cool to see where it shakes out. Don't forget, you can read everything we talk about in videos in a free issue of Cycle News magazine. There's no better way to catch up on everything in the motorcycle industry happening worldwide. Every sort of motorcycle sport you can imagine is covered 100% every week. If you miss a week, no big deal. Check back in next week. You'll be caught back up. Thanks, everybody. Jesse Ziegler from Cycle News. That's Sean Finley, and we're out of here. Thank you.